Well, we're ready to get your Tuesday off and started for this hour. Thanks for being with us. On today's show, pop icon Lady Gaga is breaking new ground with a dance designed to be inclusive for disabled people. Alicia Grace Chenier will tell us all about it in a few minutes. And neurodiversity isn't a challenge to be fixed. It's a unique way of experiencing the world. Marco Pasqua shares why embracing neurodiversity is a game changer for self-expression, creativity, and innovation. Away we go, folks, as we dance into today's show.
This is Kelly and Company.
Well, I'm not alone here, ladies and gentlemen. Nazreen Abdel-Majid joining us, and Alicia Grace Chenier also with us on the program. Okay, a couple of points of business. Alicia, welcome back to the show. We're going to get to a very interesting chat with you and Nazreen in a couple of moments, and you'll hang out with us for our conversations on the show. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for asking.
All right, glad to have you. Nazreen's going to do some description now, Alicia Grace, for us.
Yes.
Niz, what do you got there? This is something that your husband says resembles you.
I don't see it. So I have a big mug, and when I mean big, it's like 2 cups of coffee big. So it's a chick, shaped like a chick, and it's like chubby from the bottom, and it's molded from the inside, and it's really cute. So beside where the inside of the cup where you're taking a sip from, it says peep peep on it.
Oh,
It's adorable.
So
it has like a little nose, little eyes, and like big feet just in the front. So right when my husband saw it, he's like, "Oh my God, it looks like you." And I was like, "What?" I hope that's adorable, and that's what he's referring to. And then my sister's the one who bought it for me, so she's like, "Oh, it reminded me of you." And I was like, "Okay, that's 2 people telling me that this mug looks like me."
wow. So how many cups can it hold? Like of the average coffee cup?
2 cups. I measured it.
Okay. All right.
And it's
that's
not enough.
average, not necessarily a coffee maker, those 12 cups that are the little ones. This is like a 12 cup, or I'm sorry, 2 cups of normal size. Would you say 16 ounce or whatever it is?
I would say it's like an average of that, but it's not enough. It's
all right.
You may see as gigantic, but I feel like it's always, I can never get enough of coffee. So yeah.
Here's the other question. You said it says beep beep on the side, like the noise.
Yeah.
But doesn't chicks make a beep beep? Isn't it more of a CH kind
A
of sound?
cartoony version of chicks. It's like beep beep.
Really?
Yeah.
I always thought it would be more like beep beep. No?
What do you think, Alicia?
Yeah.
The only experience that I have is reading books to children for that. And we would often go cheep, 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 cheep.
Oh, okay.
See, that's what I wondered. But cheep cheep is also done often for birds, but maybe chicks are seen a bit different. I don't know. Like, wow.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. I digress, but I kind of wonder. There you go, Niz. That might be a great poll question to throw it on the poll. What do you use to the sound? Interesting. Folks, remember to check out our podcast. Please do so from your podcast platform of choice. While you're in there, if you would, maybe give us a rating and review. That would be nice. So check out at your leisure and subscribe, if you would, to that and our YouTube page to the Kelly and Company podcast.
A major move towards inclusion in the world of music and dance, Lady Gaga, known for pushing boundaries, has introduced a new dance which ended up being accessible for people with disabilities. Alicia Grace Chenier is here to break it down. Hi, Alicia.
Hi.
So, Lady Gaga has always been known for her bold creativity, but what do you think got her to make different versions of this dance? Did she purposely do this, or was it just a creative design?
So this was something that I was trying to really figure out when looking up this dance, because I don't know if she purposely did this. It might have just been something that, the creative team was just like, hey, let's just do different formattings of this. But I do know that Lady Gaga has fibromyalgia, so she might have been thinking about, the disability community, but, that while she was filming it, it could have also been something to adapt to her needs and accessibility.
Yeah, I was kind of being hopeful too that it's just not in our heads, and she was actually purposely doing it, and it wasn't just an accident. I haven't been able to
find anything on the internet about it, though, unfortunately.
Let's pretend, okay? Yeah. This is for real. So, how does the dance incorporate adaptable movements that allow people of all abilities to participate and enjoy the performance?
I think what makes this dance specifically accessible is because it's a lot of arm motions and hand motions, and she's sitting in a chair for this. So I have seen going on TikTok and all of that, people who are in wheelchairs doing this dance, people who have limb differences, different people of, you know, different disabilities across the board, doing it in their own way. And, you know, kind of, I don't want to say praising Lady Gaga, but really taking in the dance as their own.
Yeah. But how does this initiative set a new precedent for accessibility in music, dance, and live performances? And what could it mean for future artists?
Yeah, I think for future artists, you know, it might make them think, you know, more into that accessibility. And like because, you know, dances go trending on TikTok all the time with music. And I think it just gives people another way and another format to expand their audience as well. Because so often there's dances and like stuff that, you know, us as disabled people might not be able to do. So Lady Gaga really doing this has brought the disability community together to actually be able to participate in a dance trend.
Yeah. So it's a trend on TikTok now, which is pretty cool.
It is very, very cool. I see a lot of people doing like their own versions of it, but it's really cool when you see people with different disabilities putting their own style and flair into it.
Yeah, and what makes it better is that she's a pop icon. I mean, she's a legend. She is very inspirational, and people look up to her. So to see an artist, and when I think of Lady Gaga, I think of poker face, poker face. So that was like the early 2000s, right? So when I think of Lady Gaga, that's what I picture, and it's just, you know, to see an artist really participate in something like this that is part of our community and really makes us feel inclusive and you know, like, I don't want to say fit in because that's cliche, but really acknowledge our community, which makes a difference to me personally. It really brings it to home. So isn't it beautiful? Yeah.
Yes, and I think too, I absolutely love it. And Lady Gaga, you know, I grew up listening to her music, and it's just bringing me back to the old albums that I used to listen to. And I think too, I don't know if Lady Gaga intended on this because, again, like, there's not a lot of information right now that's out. But in a way, she's kind of like normalizing the different variations of how to do a dance as well.
Yeah. No, it's amazing. And I hope other artists like take note of that and see it could make a difference, and it really is personal. So thank you so much, Alicia. That was fun.
Yes, I had so much fun.
And I got the song stuck in all of your heads today, so you're welcome for that. It's refreshing to see artists like Lady Gaga leading the charge for inclusion in the entertainment industry. This new dance is a powerful reminder that accessibility and creativity can go hand in hand.
Poker face. 1D.
Yeah.
Boy, I love it. There you go.
Got it stuck in your heads.
I did. That's exactly, for sure, that's exactly what's going on. I want to welcome Marco Pasqua into this conversation because I got a question for all of you. Marco calling in from our far west coast out in Vancouver, and we'll be getting to a very interesting conversation, all of us, a roundtable chat in a moment. But let's start here with, when it comes to artists and our history of people being able to open and say, hey, this is, as you guys mentioned, the fibromyalgia, for example, with Lady Gaga. Do you think this changes things, Marco, in the way of other artists being a little more open? And we know a lot will talk about the mental health piece for themselves, but a lot of people over the years, physical disability in any form, or if they've had an injury even that's caused them not to be able to dance as in the same way. A lot of time we didn't hear about that, and now people do a little more exploration of, hey, what does this mean, or what about other people? And on social media we're seeing more conversations. Do you think other artists may see it, even if it's just to be more open?
Yeah, Kelly, I think that, it sets a precedence that if somebody like Lady Gaga can, open up about this, then it says, that it's okay for people to be vulnerable and, to show up as their authentic self. I think that is actually really, really important, because there's so much taboo that has been centered around disability for years and years and years. And I think that the more that so-called mainstream people, open up about this, and it's like, this is impacting not only everyday average people, but also people who put themselves in center stage as well.
Alicia Grace, if more artists started to kind of take this format, we hear a song that somebody releases and we'll hear different versions of it, and if people started to come up with different dance ways of doing a particular dance, whatever they brand the name of it, what do you think? We like this, or after a while do you start feeling, is it just follow the leader, part of the gimmick?
I think it's really depend on how it's done creatively. Lady Gaga, in her music video where she showed this dance, a lot of the music video was her just dancing, and then there went to a part where she was in the chair. And I think, including it within the actual video and not just having like a separate video being like, hey, here's an alternate, but really making it like the normalized and standard, and just, just making it a part of the original process is, I think, the way forward.
Yeah, the less obvious, that. And probably Nisreen, possibly how come it's hard to find when you go looking it up. It's yeah, but guys, I'm not doing anything different. I'm just doing something, the same dance in a different way.
Yeah.
And I think that's good.
Totally.
Exactly. Alicia, I was just wondering, can you describe some dance moves to us?
Of the one that she's doing, this was it was very fast. So as someone with low vision, I don't know if I can do it. There was a lot of hand motions though.
Yeah.
I like that. I wonder what they mean in that. But I guess people, when you look up the dance and kind of understand them with the song itself, probably can ascertain that. Awesome. Really great discussion, guys. Follow us on Instagram and Twitter at Kelly & Co. AMI, please, on Instagram and Twitter. As we approach the start of Neurodiverse Celebration Week on March 17th, Marco Pasqua is here to help us break down some misconceptions, explore how neurodiverse individuals can thrive when given the right opportunities, and share real-life examples of how embracing different ways of thinking benefits all of us. Marco, of course, welcome back. Neurodiversity is a term we are hearing more often, but many people may not fully understand what it means. What does it encompass, and why are we celebrating it next week?
Yeah, thanks, Kelly. So simply put, neurodiversity is a description for people who think, learn, and process information differently. So there's individuals like myself who would be considered neurotypical, think, learning, and processing in your average ways, where individuals who potentially are on the autism spectrum, have ADHD, dyslexia, may think, learn, and process information differently, or be impacted by environmental conditions in ways that you or I potentially are not impacted. And I think like it's become a lot more prevalent over the last several years, just because diagnosis has been, approached differently, as well as it's impacted by a lot of people. I think the last I heard is that individuals with autism is 1 in 33, whereas a couple of decades ago it was like 1 in 10,000. So obviously this is really starting to impact a lot more people, and this is exactly why it's important for us to understand that.
And again, I kind of, as we get to know it more and ascertain, as you say, the number changes, I would think that sometimes people are quick to say, well, that person does things very different. My son has a different way of thinking of things. Do you think those are what start the investigation, or when people do tests, when medical people do tests? Or is there more of a prominent thing that would be that signal? So we're not walking around saying, well, gee, Marco thinks the thing's a little different, so he must be, or, again, we always start doing self-diagnosis in some capacity. Hey, that person has to be, and not necessarily viciously or meaning any demigration or pointing someone out and saying they need to be fixed or something wrong, because we know this isn't something that needs to be fixed, folks.
No, exactly, right? I think that for a lot of people, when they're in social situations, most things come natural to them if they're neurotypical. You start to pick up on things like social cues. If someone's uncomfortable, or you just feel the energy change in a social circle, if you were to do something that would make somebody feel uncomfortable. Now, some people who, for example, are on the autism spectrum may not pick up on some of those social cues. And so some individuals may display those things differently. If they're uncomfortable in situations, they may do something called stimming, which is where their body is reacting, or their hands, or they tend to fidget. And your average person might think, oh, geez, this person is anxious, or oh, why did they keep looking at their watch? Oh, they must, not think that this conversation is important. But it's really important to take a step back in that moment and say, oh, maybe there's actually something else going on for this person, and to have a little bit more compassion. I often, when I take public transit, I have started to notice patterns where I can tell that somebody may not be neurotypical or neurodivergent, simply by the way in which they're interacting with, holding on to the poles in the bus, touching and feeling textures, interacting with people in different ways, especially strangers that they've never met before, coming up and making potentially strange noises. And then again, this is going to impact people in completely different ways. But as you said, Kelly, this doesn't necessarily mean that there's anything wrong with this individual. It just means that their brain processes things differently, right? And their body has now adapted to this. And for many people, this can actually show up, and I often advocate this as actually a strength, not a disadvantage, because the way in which their brain has been hardwired now can actually be doing things in ways that are super efficient. And I have some examples that I'd love to share with some friends, but I'll let you continue.
I was going to ask, can you tell us about Neurodiversity Celebration Week?
Yeah, okay, so for myself, as I said at the top, I'm not neurodivergent myself, but I think that the week in and of itself is really to celebrate those differences, as I said, to highlight that people think, learn, and process information differently, and that for example, a lot of companies out there, that this can actually be approached as an asset within your workforce. We're often typically seeing, depending on the industry that you work in, we always hire the same kind of person, that has the same type of background or the same types of learning. And, when I was working for a group here called the President's Group in British Columbia, when I was one of their consultants, they're known for accessibleemployers.ca, the website with a bunch of resources. I learned about so many different programs. And one of the programs that I learned about was something called Autism at Work, which was started by a company called Special Listern many, many years ago. And they learned very quickly that in the software industry, or in the industries with computers and technologies, many times they were seeing people with neurodiversity show up to work. And as opposed to giving them, behavioral-based interviews where you ask questions like, if you were a sandwich ingredient, what ingredient would you be and why? Right. Well, I know that for a lot of my friends who are on the autism spectrum, they take a question like that very literally, and they're like, but I'm a human, I'm not a sandwich ingredient. What are you talking about? Right? Whereas if you, refocus the interview around that person's skill set, so instead of it being, a question-based interview, can you get this person interacting in a way where they're actually tangibly working with their hands, and interacting in a way where somebody might be able to observe them in a room, say building a robot, and seeing how they interact in a team-based setting that way? You're going to unlock different ideas or talents in somebody in a way that you're not putting them in a typical situation that could be making them feel uncomfortable. So many companies, especially when I used to work in the technology industry, were recognizing this early on and really utilizing this as an asset for many people. And I think that the week is there to celebrate these differences.
Alicia Grace, I kind of wonder, for yourself and exposure to people. I always say social media is wonderful because we get to read people's posts or stories, things that they might share. And in a circumstance like this, I also think the experience, if you meet somebody, and it opens our beginning to realize as we get older in life, I got to be more open to people and their differences, because I think the tendency a lot of people used to have would be to fear difference.
Exactly. And I think too, like, I think the internet as well, like this something I actually just read an article in my university diploma right now in my course that I'm currently studying, and it's about how people who are neurodiverse are able to use platforms such as social media to really, talk and explain and communicate with the world about, what their life is day to day and what they experience.
Wow, that's great. Marco, you've got some examples, speaking of day-to-day life and experiences.
Yeah, so I don't want to dox my friends personally. I won't give their last names, but I have some friends. One of my friends, his name is Lauren, and she has ADHD, and she really is incredible at processing logical information. So there's many times where if I'm looking at an Excel document and I'm having trouble thinking of ways to break down the information, I'll pass it over to Lauren, and she'll be able to immediately see ways where I can improve the efficiency of processing the information or displaying the information in ways that I wouldn't have thought of. And then by comparison, there's my friend Kat, who also has ADHD. However, her brain works completely differently. She's much more creative and artistic and has an outlet in art for self-expression. And so this is exactly why, for many people on the autism spectrum, for example, they say that it's a spectrum. But Kelly, I really think that you would agree that we all kind of learn on a spectrum, and some days we do things differently, or we might be exposed to different information, and it changes our way of thinking. And so for me, having those personal connections is a big deal, because I know that my friends are massive contributors to society. They're doing incredible things in the work that they do. And some of the greatest minds in the world were neurodivergent. Nikola Tesla, Einstein, Da Vinci. So, I mean, just because our brains may work differently doesn't necessarily mean that it's a disadvantage. And that's really what I was hoping to bring up this segment today.
Yeah, and a lot of people see it as a disadvantage, which is unfortunate. I mean, everywhere we go, we hear about stereotypes, and like, help us understand what are some stereotypes that people with neurodivergent individuals go through.
Well, I would say the number one thing I hear often is this person must have a cognitive disability to the point where they're not intelligible, or they're not able to do things on their own. And although there are extremes on both ends of the spectrum to where your neurodivergence may impact certain aspects of your daily life to the point where it could impact your social ability to even work in society, that doesn't necessarily mean that that's the average for most people. So I think that for anyone who is thinking that this is a disadvantage, I would implore them to think of ways that maybe you could put this person in a different type of scenario, or I don't know, maybe talk to the person directly and say, are there certain type of social situations that make you uncomfortable? Are there ways in which we can adjust? And I'm not telling anyone to baby an individual out there and just coddle to them or tailor to them specifically in a way that makes them feel less than. I'm saying work with the person to find ways where they can actually excel in society, as opposed to shutting them down, or just because you're uncomfortable, or just because you haven't been in a situation with an individual like that, that doesn't mean that this individual can't thrive given the right environment.
Marco, fantastic as usual. Beautiful conversation. We will pick up more with you in a couple of weeks.
Thanks so much, guys.
Thank you, Marco.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, really, at the end of the day, we all think, process, and learn differently, but that's what makes us stronger as a society, and Marco said it so well there. The more we embrace neurodiversity as an asset rather than a challenge, the more we unlock talent, creativity, and innovation, for sure. Let's celebrate the different ways that we all experience the world. Ladies, thank you very much for that wonderful roundtable with Marco and the conversations on the show today.
Great conversations today. Thank you.
Ooh, so great. Thank you so much.
Alicia Grace Chenier joining us. She'll be back next month with us. Nisreen Abdul-Majid will be back tomorrow with us. So really appreciate their time. Some really good conversation, folks, there with it. So if you did miss, please check out our podcast. You can also ask questions by emailing us at kellyco@ami.ca and call us at 1-866-509-4545. Parasport Nation follows on AMI Audio in the second half of our Tuesday and Friday shows. And of course, you can find it on YouTube and as a podcast. Host Alex Smythe spotlights upcoming parasport events in Canada and abroad. So let's see what's going on this week on the program. Alex, welcome back. What's coming up in a few minutes, first of all, on the show?
Yeah, Kelly. So this past weekend, the World Championship for wheelchair curling were held in Scotland, and Canada, not only did they come away with a bronze medal, but they also secured their berth in Milano Cortina for the Paralympic Games next year. So
Nice.
we were privileged to have Chrissy Molnar, one of the newest members of the team, join the show, chat about the experience. It was her first time competing at a world championship. She joined the national team last year. So it's all a new experience for her, and to come away with a bronze medal in her first truly major international competition is huge. And that sets the stage for a year from now in Milano Cortina for the Paralympic Games.
Talk about excitement, right? And
Yeah.
for you guys, having someone right off of the events, do we pick up that feel of that event, especially being in Scotland, the whole environment and participation? I mean, I know the athletes there to compete, but as they speak, the excitement, especially at first?
Yeah, well, it's interesting. So talking with Chrissy, because it's new to her, she talked about the emotion, the nerves, so to speak, of kind of entering in that competition for the first time, that first game, because this is her first real chance to kind of show her skills on that international stage. She was at the games the previous year, but she served as an alternate. So she wasn't actually competing. She was there as a backup in case someone else was injured or if they wanted to rotate the squad. We kind of debrief a bit on that, and it's like, well, there's that value that, okay, you're exposed to that first, so you're not kind of going in without any sense, but you get an idea of how to be prepared for a major competition going forward.
You savor every moment. Alex, we look forward to that conversation. It's coming up next right here on AMI Audio, right after the show. Find it on YouTube. And as a podcast, you can subscribe. They'd appreciate a rating and review, just like we would. Speak about that for our show, folks. Check out our podcast from your platform of choice and do the same. Give us a rating and review. On our next program, one of the best times to do a little housekeeping is during the winter months when we're already housebound, but it can become a bit overwhelming, especially if you're someone who likes to hang on to things. Fear not! Francis Wong is here with tips on decluttering at this time of the year. That conversation on the next edition of Kelly & Company. Fedora's off to you. Have a great day.
Thanks for tuning in to Kelly & Company. Follow us on all social media, and don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel for more.